الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Where we are, it's last time we finished, the Fard al-Ain, the individual prayers, the individual obligatory prayers. So today, the plan is, God willing, to get on to Salat al-Jum'ah, but we're going to begin with Salat al-Janazah, Fard al-Kifaya. Then we're going to move on to the Sunnah prayers, and then something that gets complicated, how to correct your prayer if you make a mistake, the Sajda Sahw, and then inshallah we'll move on to Salat al-Jum'ah. And hopefully we'll try to finish, the whole section on prayer. Inshallah, if Allah wills it. 140 to 143, inshallah.
140 to 143?
140 to 143.
So these are for the Ain and for Kifaya Salat.
Yeah.
So 140 is section, and the 5 prayers are fard obligation, and the salat over the dead person is a communal responsibility without doubt. Its fard obligations are the takbir 4 times, the dua, the intention, and saying the salam silently. And like the salat, the ghusl, burial, and enshrouding the corpse are communal responsibilities, while the witr, eclipse, Eid, and rain salats are sunnahs.
Okay. So, how see the Mayara, the commentator that we're using, says prayers are divided into Fard and Nafl. Yeah? So then, the Fard gets divided into Fard al-Ain and Fard al-Kifaya. I'll wait, before we get to the Nafl. Let's deal with, the Fard al-Kifaya first. The Fard al-Kifaya, it's literally, everyone that's here, all of us are under obligation until someone gets up and does it. Then the obligation from the rest is lifted. Does that make sense? Yeah. For instance, what we're doing now, what we're covering, this is Fard al-Ain. This is an individual obligation to know the basics of the deen, to know every, the finer points of jurisprudence. That's Fard al-Kifaya. To know, the finer points of zakat and everything that we're covering, that is a Fard al-Kifaya. From the prayers, the Salat al-Janazah. Now, Salat al-Janazah as a prayer, it's actually, technically it's not a prayer. Yeah? So, how would you define a prayer? Salat. What are the obligatory actions of prayer? Standing, ruku, standing from ruku, then going into sajda, sitting from the sajda, going into sajda, then repeating it, and the salam and the intention. So in Salatul Janazah, we don't have the ruku, we don't have the sajdas, and we don't have the we have the beginning, and we have the standing, and we have the salam. Now The obligations of it, it's 4 takbeers. Now, the 4 takbeers, the understanding is they take the same hukm as a rak'ah, a 4 rak'at salat. So, do you remember how we began? So, you bring your hand, Allahu Akbar, 4 times. Yeah. Now, the mashhur is you only raise your hands for the first only. The dua, I think I put that note up if
On the Facebook, you put the note.
If you learn that. If you can't, then there's a formula for the Salatul Janazah. The mashhur is we don't say that use this formula for supplication. The formula is that you praise God, you bless the Prophet ﷺ, and you seek forgiveness for the deceased, male or female. So, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah, Allahumma gfir lah. Yeah? Or Allahumma gfir laha. After each, takbir. That will suffice. Yeah? There is no recitation of Surah Fatiha. I know in the Shafi method they recite Surah Fatiha. There is no recitation of Surah Fatiha. It's just, the Salatul Janazah is making dua. You're interceding with God. The philosophy behind it is that the living intercede for the dead. That's all it is.
I see.
Yeah.
So this dua is right after the takbir.
Right after each takbir. So right after each takbir, you will praise God, you will send salawat on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you will intercede for the deceased. It can't be in any other language but Arabic.
Do you know how? So, for example, like I've grown up and I've seen they do a Fatiha straight away
After
saying Allahu Akbar.
No. Even in Hanafi fiqh they don't do it.
Okay.
In Hanafi fiqh there's no Fatiha.
Okay.
They actually make dua after the 3 takbirs. After the 4th takbir they will say salam. We say a dua after each takbir, and then you say salam.
Could I ask?
Yes.
Have I understood correctly that there's no set form, but there is, which is better to learn that this is...
No. The set for there's a preference that a supplication that Imam Malik radhiyallahu anhu prefers. Yeah, that is Imam Malik's. What you've got to understand is that a school of jurisprudence stands on its own. What happens is that the Imam who founded it, he set a methodology, so the school follows the methodology. Yeah. Now the Imam will have his own preferences, but the school will say this is the obligation. The Imam has that preference, but the obligation is that you make a supplication. Yeah. Imam Malik prefers the supplication that Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu taught. Now he wouldn't teach it if he hadn't learnt it from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what happens is that the school as a whole in prayer, it doesn't dictate to you how you supplicate to God. It says that you as an individual, because you're standing in front of your Maker, you supplicate with words that are that you want to use. So the school says the formula, these are the parameters for the supplication. The supplication has to include praising God. Yeah. So minimum, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Yeah. You have to send salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So minimum, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Yeah. Or sallallahu alaihi Muhammad. Minimum. So you have to intercede for the deceased, because that's what you're there for. It's a funeral for the dead. So minimum is Allah forgive him, Allahumma gfir lah, yeah, or Allahumma gfir laha, because you change the if it's male or masculine or feminine, and that's the minimum that's required. Now, if you want, you can go and learn, the long formulas of supplication. That is up to you. The minimum that's required from you is that. Yeah, Imam Malik prefers that dua because it's a beautiful dua. I translated it and put it up as a note. I think you shared it on the London Maliki thing. Otherwise, you can go on Facebook on my notes and you can find it. But the form, after each takbir, you praise God, salawat on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you make dua for the deceased. Yeah, inshallah. So the first obligation was to stand. Second was to make a supplication. The third is the intention. You need to know. Intention. What do people understand by intention?
It's what's in the heart, what you intend to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be verbalized.
Okay. So what does it mean?
It just means it's like what you plan to do.
Yes. So you know what you are doing.
Like when you do wudu,
Yeah.
you're already making the intention that you're going to pray.
Yeah. But the thing is that when you do something,
Yeah.
you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Conscious.
No, you need to know what you're doing. That's what the intention is. Yeah? You don't need to articulate it. You need to know what you're doing. So the intention is always that you're going to this is a fardul kifaya, 4 takbeers, and you're going to supplicate for whoever's there. And you don't need to articulate it because you need to know what you're doing. Yes.
Maybe it's coming. Do you have to know? Do you have to have? So if you pray behind an imam who's praying somewhere, do you have to know who it is involved? Or is it just enough to know it's a Muslim?
Well, it's definitely going to be a Muslim.
Right, but you have to know that it's.
You don't need
Muhammad
to know.
Muhammad or,
You don't. All you need to know it's a male or female. So when you're supplicating, you're saying you're supplicating for a man or yeah. And it does actually. If you get it wrong, it doesn't matter. If you're supplicating for a man and it turns out to be a woman,
right.
God knows what you're saying. Yeah.
I've heard a case like that.
Yeah.
Not the man. I've heard a case where it's a true story that a Jew pretended to be an imam for a number of years just because it was his job and he's done it for years.
Yeah.
And people and he knows all the books and everything. He doesn't believe it, and people don't know he's a Jew. But it's just become his sort of career. No.
What we're talking about is the one who's died.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That it doesn't matter if you know the sex or not.
Oh,
usually they'll make an announcement, so it's good to know who it is, but you don't need to name them unless you really know them and you're going to make this long supplication. Yeah. The fourth obligation is the salam. Now, the salam is silent. It's not loud. Nowadays, with the microphones, everyone will hear. So it's not, a really loud salam. As long as the one next to you hears it.
The same way as a normal person.
Normal. Assalamu alaikum. Yes.
Two things. One, I'm slightly confused. What was the first obligation and the second obligation? I think I got them mixed up.
Okay. The first We're taking it in the order of, it comes in the poem.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
So the first one would be the 4 takbeers. Otherwise, the first takbir would be, the first obligation would be the intention.
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah?
yeah.
But we're following the order of the poem. So it's 4 takbirs. That's the first. The second is the supplication for the deceased. The third is the intention. The fourth is the salam.
That's good.
Yeah? Now, any questions?
So the idea of silently do salam. So is that, I always get confused. Is this when someone else can hear the person next to you, or you
Yes.
yourself?
Yes.
Which,
The word someone else can hear
but
you.
isn't that loud then?
Well,
'Cause- so silently means someone else can hear you.
yes.
And what does
Assalamu
loud mean
alaikum.
then?
Loud. Assalamu alaikum.
So that means couple people can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
No, it's good to ask. Now, there's a lot of questions that arise in, practice, how Muslims practice. This is, literally the skeleton of the prayer for the deceased. There isn't, the rest, anything else are literally additions to it. People will make a supplication after the Salatul Janazah. It doesn't make sense, because you've just actually made a supplication in front of God in the obligatory prayer there. Have you noticed that people will do it afterwards? Yeah. The other thing is that it shouldn't be prayed in the mosque.
As far like an obligatory not?
It shouldn't be. In practice, what's happened is that it was nothing to do with the mosque, because the body is usually taken to the graveyard, and that's where the Salatul Janazah would happen. I'll paint a picture for you. From the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the procession, the body would be behind the men. The men would walk in front. The body would be behind. Then the women would be behind the body. Yeah, we don't have a problem with women going to graveyards or going to with the procession. There's actually a really interesting narration. The procession is going, and a wail of a woman lamenting, crying out, is heard, and Sayyidina Umar, a woman, and the Prophet ﷺ says, yes, carry on.
Oh God.
Sayyida Atiyah, a famous Sahabiya who narrates, this. She actually is a jurist in herself. She narrates this, that, the Prophet ﷺ just said, carry on. So, with Malikis, we don't have a problem. Where women will, wail and lament, yeah, that's not all. Crying is not a problem. It's a normal, human emotion. But when someone dies, you cry, yeah. But wailing and lamenting, that's discouraged. Yeah. Yes.
See, we have this thing in Morocco, and I've always wondered where it came from. At funerals and stuff, they tell us not to cry because you're like burning the person that's passed away. Has that got anything to do with religion at all?
It actually does. It's misunderstood. Because Sayyida Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she actually, in Arabic, they call It's a genre of hadith works where she's corrected the companions when they've narrated hadith. So the one who narrates this hadith was corrected by Sayyidah Aisha. She says, we were in the house and you were outside of the house. Maybe you misheard. It's amazing how she words this. Because the Prophet ﷺ he cursed the Jews because they think that when you cry, it hurts the people who have passed away. No, it doesn't. It's just that human emotion. It's in the Deen. There's nothing wrong with that. Because when the Prophet ﷺ's son, the last son, Ibrahim, from the Egyptian wife, the Copt, Maria Qibtiyya, when he passed away, all of Medina gathered in his house, and he was sad. He cried, and he says, "Yes, I cried because it's a human emotion. When you lose a son, it's gonna." And then there was a solar eclipse. So people start, subhanallah. Look, even God sad at the demise, the death of your son. That he's made the sun. And the Prophet ﷺ said, "No, that's a law of nature. That the sun comes in front, or the moon comes in front of the sun." He says that's got nothing to do with the death of my son. But I'm sad that my son has died. And when his uncle, Sayyidina Hamza radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he was martyred in Uhud, he cried. Because the thing is, he was his uncle, but they'd actually grown up together. And also, his Hamza's mother was, the aunt of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because the mother of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Amina, and the mother of Hamza, they were both sisters. And it's a human emotion that but where people go over the top, that's discouraged. Pardon?
You hear people really, really vilify it. Is it? What's the ruling on it? Do we say it's dislike, it's haram, or somebody who's really
going over the top? It's better just to pity them rather than give a hukum on it.
But people do.
I know. Let people give those. Yeah, because the thing is that what you've got to understand is someone's actually just lost someone precious. Rather than giving a hukum on them, it's Sheikh Muhammad Ghazali rahmatullah alayhi, it's a famous quote of his. He says, rather than finding fault with someone who doesn't pray, hold his hand and take him to the mosque.
You've got a point.
Yeah, don't find fault with him. Encourage him to go to the mosque. And the thing is that when a tragedy like that happens, you've got to feel sorry for them. It does become difficult. Inshallah. Okay. Of course, in the Nadam, in the poem, he hasn't mentioned, the standing. Of course, it's an obligation to stand. Yeah. So you stand, intention, takbir. Yeah. After each takbir, you'll make a dua, and after the fourth takbir, after the dua, you make the salam.
Do you mentioned the solar eclipse?
Yes.
Thing. Do you think that would be? This is a very side question, but do you think that is, as in tafsir, as a strong evidence for in today's time, sort of Muslims drawing false analogies between almost anything, especially?
We're going to cover the solar eclipse prayer, so you will answer it then.
Okay.
Inshallah. Yeah. Okay. Now, okay. Any questions again on the prayer? Yeah.
One more. Is the takbiratul ihram or as a first before the fourth, or is it just four?
No, it's literally, like you'd open the prayer, Allahu Akbar. Yeah. hands down.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Then Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. You can read, the full salawat that you read in the prayer, whichever one that you find comfortable. Then make a dua. Then Allahu Akbar again. Then repeat it.
You don't put your hands up, do you?
No. The mashhur is that you don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
but you do say the takbir aloud. Yes.
Sorry. If we're following a Hanafi, that's as usual here.
Yes.
We just copy them.
No, they will do exactly like we will do it. Okay. There will be 4 takbirs, but what they do is after the first takbir, they praise God. Yeah, like they open the prayer Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa tabaraka ismuka. They'll do that. Then after the second takbir, they will read salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then after the third takbir, they will pray for the deceased. Well, what we're doing is after each takbir, we are praying for the deceased. Yeah, and that's the practice that's transmitted as well. Okay. Now, this should come first, but it's the order of the poem. Then you've got the ghusl, the washing of the body. Then the burial of the body, and then you've got the shroud. Yeah. Has anybody washed a body? Yes. So you.
Last week.
Alhamdulillah. It's good. Is someone close?
My uncle.
All right. Sorry. Anybody else? No? It's actually a good thing to, I don't know, wherever you've come from, if they, because people usually go and help. Sometimes, family doesn't want to, but sometimes family doesn't want to do it, other people will do it. And in Birmingham, we've actually got a group of sisters who teach other sisters how to wash, and they'll come out and help.
New Muslims projects, they do training as well, so that converts can do other converts. So just interesting, converts.
Converts?
Yeah.
Just Muslims?
But because they don't tend to have Muslim family, so the convert circles then taking responsibility of doing the washing. So where there's not already systems in place like Birmingham and Peterborough, I think we have a group of sisters.
No, because the mosque, whichever mosque that you're going through, they usually take over anyway.
Yeah.
But it's good that, there is that.
Yeah, that was Sister Little at Leicester did it because the need was coming up. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first thing that you've got to do is make sure that there's nothing left in the orifices. If there's any feces or any urine. Now I had to do this in front of a group of nurses, and I learned something from them. How our text teaches that you just press the stomach very lightly, you squeeze it, so if there's anything there, it comes out. Now the nurses told me you just lift the torso, and I actually prefer that one. You just lift the torso, it naturally squeezes the stomach. Because here in this country they have a stainless steel thing that they put the body on, and the shower is there to wash. So if anything comes out, you wash it off. Now, what you've got to understand when you dealing with the body is that this is a rule that a lot of us don't adhere to, but we should. The honor of a Muslim is the same as if they were alive. So just because someone is dead, their honor is still sacrosanct. And what the Prophet ﷺ said about, the honor of a Muslim is that it's greater than the house of God. He was actually sitting next to the Kaaba, and he pointed. He says the honor of a Muslim is greater than the Kaaba, than the house of God. So what you do is, their privates, the aura is always covered. Yeah. We don't need to go over that because we covered that last time. Yeah. So you just put a cloth over it. You squeeze. If anything comes out, you wash it away. Then what will happen is you'll wash the parts that you wash in wudu first. Yeah. So the face, hands, forearms. Yeah. And you'll the ghusl. Do you remember when we did the ghusl? You leave the feet last. Yeah. So you wash the hands. First of all, if anything comes out, you wash that. You wash the private so they're clean. Then the hands, face, forearms. Then the right side, front and back. You can actually turn them. If you do turn them, wash the leg as well. Then the left. Yeah. Front and back, and the leg, and you'll wash the legs last. The lower legs and the feet. Now, what you'll use initially, you use just plain water. We don't have what the Prophet ﷺ used. It's called sidr. Have you heard of this word? Sidr? Yeah?
I don't know if it's the same thing, but isn't that like a sidr honey?
Yeah. That's what came to mind as well.
Right. That tree?
Yeah.
From where the bees collect that, is that the leaves of that tree.
Okay.
It's called sidr. Do any of you speak Punjabi? Okay. Okay. Do you know what a berry is? No. Berry.
Yes, I think so.
No, it's a tree.
Yes.
It's a tree that has, it's a fruit about that big. It's a sidr tree. And the fruit is really, it tastes like a bit like apples. Most of the Asian shops will sell them when it's in season. The leaves don't come. Now, why the sidr leaves are mentioned, that when you bruise them, you get soap suds from them.
You get what?
Like a lava from soap.
Okay.
From those leaves you get it. So what usually would happen is you'd bruise the leaves and you put them in the water. Now you just use soap. Yeah. But yes.
For my uncle, they use the leaves.
Did they? Where did they get them from?
I don't know. One of his friends actually had them.
Okay.
Because I remember they had like a bucket and they had
the leaves in it, and they rubbed them, and you had like a soapy suds on the top, and you use those to instead of soap. Yeah. If you can get them, it's fine.
Somebody else locally. There's someone else locally who wanted to get them, but couldn't find them in time.
Yeah, it's difficult because the tree doesn't grow here. But again, what you've got to understand is why the leaves were used. Because there's a lava that, like you would get from soap, and that's applied after the initial wash. Then you can use soap here if you don't have it, but liquid soap rather than
the hard soap.
Hard soap, liquid soap. You just because it's easy to apply.
But But you said first you use the plain water.
Just plain, you'd wash just anything that's there off. Then apply that. Then wash that off. What you've got to use, then after that, the first wash is plain water. Second wash is with sidr or soap. Third is with camphor. Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Camphor.
Okay. Camphor in the water.
Camphor in the water.
And the first wash is full ghusl.
Every time is full.
Okay.
Every time is full. What you do initially is, wash the parts that you would wash in wudu. After that, you just apply whatever you're using, and then just wash it all off. The final wash, you make sure that there's before you apply camphor, there shouldn't be any resin. That needs to. It's literally what you've got to do is like you would be having a shower, ghusl. That's what you're doing to the body. Now, the final one would be with camphor. So the smell of camphor remains. You don't rub it off, you just pat it dry.
So do you know the one we were talking about with the leaves? That would be the second one, washing the whole body with that. What is camphor? I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, camphor, have you been near a body?
Yes.
You know that smell you get?
Oh, okay.
That's camphor. Or in Arabic they call it kafur. In English it's camphor.
Vicks.
Smells like Vicks.
Yeah, but it's camphor. Yeah. Now, the washing is an odd number of times. Something our text is not going to cover, which is really important. Who does the washing? Oh, before I move on to that, are we okay about washing? Could you do it? No?
Well, given what you just said, but I would want to see it done first, obviously.
Demonstrate.
It's a pity we haven't got one of those dummies.
Yeah.
We could, but we haven't got the thing either. We haven't got a.
We could do a course on it.
We could do a course on it.
I'd love to attend.
Seriously, we could do it.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think there's always need for that.
It's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. We could organise it.
Inshallah.
I did it once. I just got someone to volunteer. Someone lay down, and we just moved on. We had a lot of women screaming, but so I haven't done it since. It just touches certain people's raw nerves. But just keep in mind that if you don't remember, inshallah, when you do it, keep in mind the ghusl that you take. Yeah, the ghusl that you take, that's what you are doing on the body of the deceased.
Is each of these three fard? One is the plain water.
What you've got, there's a difference of opinion. Is the ghusl sunnah? Is it fard? Yeah. But rule of thumb is if we say fard, then we get stuck. If we say sunnah, we get stuck. Because the thing is, I'll give you an example. Someone, a woman dies. Yeah, she doesn't have any, mahram. Yeah, and there are no women to wash her. What will we do? So it's only a bunch of men.
Then you wouldn't do it, would you?
No, but what would we do?
You couldn't.
Huh?
You couldn't do it because I'm a Muslim, so.
Yeah, no, but we would still do something.
You get a non-Muslim woman to do it.
No. Non-Muslim, no.
What if you?
No.
What if you put leave the clothes on, but shower enough and then water?
No.
She doesn't have any mahram though, so.
She doesn't have no mahram.
So there's no woman on this planet.
There's no woman there. We would wash, the hands and face.
Oh.
Because they're not aura.
So like a tayammum minimum.
Yeah, because they're not aura. And it would be the same with a woman.
Okay. Yeah.
If there were just women, it was man, a man, yeah, they would wash, everything that wasn't aura. Yeah. Now, coming to, my question, who has priority in washing?
The family?
Huh?
Immediate family.
Immediate family. So, from immediate family, is it the paternal immediate or the maternal, paternal or maternal? Father side or mother side?
Mother's side.
Mother side?
Just because it's unexpected. You would have thought it's always paternal side in Muslim jurisprudence. But you're asking, so I thought it might be the opposite.
No, it's actually always paternal side, not paternal.
Yeah, always paternal. Yeah.
Always paternal.
That's why I thought, because you were asking, it might not be the obvious.
Yeah. So if it's a husband, the wife has priority. Yeah. If it's this is where we disagree with the Hanafis.
What do they say?
Oh no. Dead, finished. The bonds of
kinship are
gone. She can't do it.
Surely that doesn't.
The wife has precedence over the kids.
No, wife has over the husband. She would wash her husband.
Even if he had sons.
Even if he had sons.
Okay.
And the husband will wash the wife, even if he has daughters. Now, if they don't want to do it, then the others would kick in.
Yeah. So it's first the spouse, then the children of the same sex.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Anybody know who washed Sayyidina Abu Bakr? His wife.
She did it on her own.
She's not going to have help.
Okay.
It's her husband.
Okay, so if the wife is doing it or the husband is doing it to the wife, does he still need to cover the aura?
Say it again?
Do you still need to cover the aura?
You still need to cover the aura because the honor is still there.
So say if the husband's really heavy and she can't. I'm just thinking, because I was thinking, she did it on her own, which is good, but then it's like how.
No, but if they need help, it's not a problem.
Okay, right.
They could have them. But what happens is that family, immediate family, because the relationship of the husband and wife, it's because what happens is when these things happen, the closure is quicker. Because what I've noticed is that most of my life has been in Birmingham. It's where because of Hanafi fiqh, the woman doesn't get closure quickly. I've actually not taken women in my car to the graveyard because kept them away so the men don't see them. Sorry. There you go, doors kicked in. If they have this, it gives them quicker because they actually know it's gone.
Yeah, it's true.
Because traditional South Asian doesn't matter what fiqh you're coming from, is that once he or she dies, the body's gone. Yeah. Then the body leaves the house. The women never get any access to it. Apart from, they do something which I loathe. Really, I loathe it. If I could go and forcibly stop it, I would stop it. Where, they all line up to look at the face of the deceased. Because, if you keep in mind that, the honor of a believer is, sacrosanct, is the same as they're alive or dead. So I'm sitting here, if, anyone, if we got a line of people just coming to look at my face, how are you going to feel? Yeah? Now, someone's died, why do they need to see their face? Yeah? I really don't. Yes.
So if these things are going on and you don't agree with it, and say for example it's like it's happened to the wife's passed away, and the husband doesn't agree with this kind of stuff, is it better to just leave it rather than create a fuss?
Well, Imam Malik radhiyallahu anhu, his understanding was if you can't come with a solution, then don't make a fuss. If you can come up with a solution to the problem, then fine. Come up with that, because his thing was al-fitnatu ashaddu min al-qatl, that fitna is worse than killing someone. Yeah. So rather than just causing a ruckus, because you're going to end up hurting people's hearts, and those are really difficult times. So if you can come up with a solution to it, now if the women are involved in this, then it's not a problem. And if the whole thing, I don't know if it happens in London or wherever, in Peterborough, where they'll pray, they'll do the funeral prayer, and then the men will line up. If it's a male, they'll all line up, just look at the face.
That's really interesting, because we had a recent passing away of a young sister, a very young sister, in year 5. She had a hemorrhage or something, and we had non-Muslims and Muslims all gathered there, and the women were completely baffled. They were like, why can't we go in? What's categorically wrong with that? And so I never knew that there actually existed an opinion. I thought it was absolute in all fiqhs that the women can't go to the graveyard, because it does give them pleasure.
No, even in Hanafi fiqh, there is an opinion that women can go to the graveyard, as long as certain parameters are respected. But I'm not talking just about going to the graveyard. It's being involved. Then they should be involved in the funeral prayer. Because at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there used to be a procession. The women used to go. So why would you take the women with you if they're not going to pray over the deceased? Yeah, and then I can understand, the women standing aside and the men, digging the grave and then putting the body in. But the women are there. Yeah, because at least they're there. But when you keep them totally away, it doesn't give them. As I said, I've taken women in my car. Once the men have walked away, I said, go and sit.
The Shia go to the grave as well.
Pardon?
Shias
exactly the same. They don't allow them either.
They don't. Because when I was young, my best friend died. He was Shia. And it was men and women who all went to the grave. So I thought that was normal for Shia. They're Iranian.
Pakistani Shias don't.
They don't.
Yeah, my family wouldn't. I've got half Shia family. They wouldn't do that.
They don't. They just they'll like Sunnis. They'll go to the mosque. But they won't let them go to the graveyard. Go on.
I haven't really asked. I was just relates to you. Now I'm thinking about morbid stuff. Because where we live, everyone's Hanafi. So my question is going to be, what do you do as a Maliki when you're probably going to be taken care of in the Hanafi way? So I'm just thinking,
what happens is this is a technical point. You can actually leave instructions before you die.
Really? Oh yeah.
Do the mosques follow because
no. If you leave instructions, this is the beauty of fiqh. Doesn't matter. This is the beauty of Islam. If a Muslim leaves a will, and the will is signed and stamped, yeah, that has to be implemented.
Even if they ask for sky burial.
Even if they ask for sky burial. We won't do it, but...
And does that work in practice?
Pardon?
Does that work in practice?
If you left a will saying, I want to be buried in Jannat al-Baqi, yeah, we will go and knock Saudi embassy.
Really?
Yeah.
And in English law, the body is, I think, property. It might have a special status of the next of kin.
Right.
So if the mosque goes and does something against the will, it's the executor has a claim against the mosque in English law.
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But what happens is that, once the will, because what happens is that, before the janazah is done, debts and everything else are sorted out. The will, if the will says that, as long as it's nothing haram, it will be implemented. So if you say, I want to be buried, like my burial rights should be according to Shafi fiqh or Maliki fiqh or Hanafi fiqh, they will have to be.
Sheikh, what about just one, and this is related to this, but you know how many people go to the graves afterwards?
Yes.
And they, God knows, make dua. What is the actual, as in what can we do and what is bid'ah completely in the Maliki Muslim? Because I know one brother who's lost his father, and he is literally loathing every single Friday and just go there to the grave.
He loathes it.
He will just cry at the grave as long as he can.
Fine. If that gives him closure, then fine. He doesn't need to go to the graveyard. But if going to the graveyard helps, then there's nothing wrong in that. Okay. But when you go, the etiquette, when you go to the graveyard, you say Assalamu alaikum ya ahlul qubur. Yeah, you say salam to them. Yeah, you address them in the present sense. Then, if you're going to someone who's dear to you, you go to the grave. You read something of the Quran with the intention that you want the deceased to benefit, and you gift it to them. And if sitting there will help you, then fine, because it's more for you than because they're gone.
Can you pray the janazah? So a friend of mine was on his honeymoon. His father died, and he landed at Heathrow.
Yes.
And by the time he got to Peterborough, he was in the ground.
Okay.
Can he pray the janazah again for himself, just for his own? I mean, not for himself, for his father, obviously, but
he can make dua for him because the janazah is being done if he's been buried. Yeah.
Okay.
One question, for the ghusl, basically, for the immediate families, the wife and the husband. But that's not what happened with the Prophet.
The Prophet ﷺ, his immediate family were involved from the paternal side.
From Sayyidina Ali?
No, it was Sayyidina Ali, Fadl bin Abbas, then Abdullah bin Abbas, the cousins of the Prophet ﷺ. His wives, no.
Yeah.
No, his wives were not involved. Because then it would have been difficult, because there was too many of them. Yes.
Sorry. Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah, go.
Maybe more than one, sorry. So I've heard it said that you can't follow the funeral procession of a non-believer.
Okay. Yeah, go on.
So does that mean I can't attend my parents' funeral? If it does, you better say so, but it's going to be a bit of a hard one.
You can. You can. What you won't be allowed to is the religious aspect of it.
So shouldn't go to the funeral mass, or shouldn't partake in the funeral mass? You should take part in the funeral. The procession, the burial. When they say mass, because it's a Christian act of worship, that's what you don't get involved in. But it could be present.
You could be present.
Not stand, sit, kneel, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. you just stand at the back or wherever you want to. Because what you've got to understand is that, people, our situation demands answers. Yeah. Now, we have answers, but the thing is, people don't want to give those answers. Yeah. Now, in 2006, I was for a month or so. I was in Spain, in Murcia, and the Muslims there. It was a village in San Antonio. They actually attend. All the Muslims, when someone died, because they're part and parcel of the community there. This is, Spanish Muslims. When a Muslim dies, all of them turn up. And when, a Christian dies, all of them turn up. But they just don't take part in, but it's their community. Yes.
Could you explain in brief, why do some people, from what perspective in fiqh do they say you're not allowed to, and why would we say it's okay?
What you've got to understand is that, the problem we have is that people say that you can't take part in, an act of worship of another religion, which is fair enough. So what you do is you don't take participate in the act of worship. Yeah, but everything else you do because it's your family. Yeah, it's your family. And the thing is, there are so many narrations where the Prophet ﷺ stood up, when the janazah used to pass of, the Jews. And there are other Sahaba who stood up. Yeah? Now, what happens is that, why did the Prophet ﷺ stand up? Because he was a human being. Yeah? The religion is secondary. It was a human being. Yes, there is that opinion that thing was abrogated. Yes, in Medina it was abrogated because there was no Jews left. Now, where communities have developed, it's the problem is that we as a Muslim community in the UK are not part and parcel of the host community. If we were, we would actually come up with answers, because we would be forced to come up with solutions. Yeah, I do not know of any Muslims who attend Christian or vice versa.
Lots of converts do.
Actually, let me take that back. Because I was the chaplain at Aston University, and the Christian chaplains came to the janazah, and I had to take him to another mosque with me. Do you remember about three young men? About 5-6 years ago, they were mowed down. Yes. They were right, yeah. And there was this open janazah in the park. It was in the park, and it was about 40 or 1,000 Muslims gathered, and so many of Sikhs, Hindus, Christians, they all came, from the local area, and they all actually prayed. They raised their hand.
We had that. Somebody died where I worked as well. This was when Youth Helpline, and at his janazah, because we used to work next door to a Jewish NGO. Yeah. So they came too, and then they did a reading at the end of the janazah.
But what needs to happen is that there needs to be a separation from the religious. There's the communal, the human aspect of it, and there's the religious aspect of it. where there's family involved, from another faith, the fiqh and the understanding is that we don't take part in the religious aspect of it.
And if you're the executor, presumably you're kind of an agent for the deceased.
Then you see, then what happens? No, you have to make sure that your parent is buried according to their faith. If you're the executor, then you've got to arrange the service and everything else. And that's fiqh, because as a son, you're duty bound. If they need to go to church or the synagogue or the temple, you drive them there, and then you pick them up and bring them home. You can't, this thing that my father's not Muslim, so I'm not having anything to do. That's not our religion, because the duties of a son don't cease. We'll break for Salat in a minute, but I'm just reminded of the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Abu Talib. There's ikhtilaf, within Sunnis that did he die a Muslim or not? But leave that aside. Yeah. When he died, his son, Sayyidina Ali, came to Sayyidina Ali saying, "Your uncle's died." So what did the Prophet ﷺ instruct him to do? He said, "Go and wash him, shroud him, bury him, and make dua for him." And the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him. So if we take the opinion that which is the majority opinion, the minority opinion is that he died a Muslim. The majority opinion is that he died not on faith, not on Islam. So here we've got instructions from the Prophet ﷺ to a son who's a Muslim, instructing the son, go and wash your father who's not a Muslim, shroud him, dig the grave, bury him, pray for him.
So presumably then we could pray for their forgiveness? Because somebody, again, in the line of Khairat, there's a line or something like that.
Yes.
And somebody, fellow new Muslim convert, whatever, jabbed me in the ribs and said we can't pray that bit.
Why not?
Because, well, my parents, alhamdulillah, are still alive, but his parents passed away, not in Islam, and therefore because Allah does not forgive shirk, he wasn't allowed to pray for their forgiveness, apparently.
No, the thing is that you can make the dua. It's up to God to answer it or not. Because
it's not improper.
It's not improper to ask. Because I'll tell you, something which is so beautiful. It dumbfounded a companion because he found it so difficult to take in. The hypocrites in Medina, their leader was known. Yeah. Now, not hypocrisy now. Hypocrisy in those days was literally the fifth column.
Conspiracy almost.
Yeah. No, it was literally a fifth column. That they outwardly had Islam. They'd not accepted Islam. They actually were working to destroy the community. Yeah. So this is what we're dealing with. Their leader dies. Yeah. So what does the Prophet ﷺ do? He gives his own shirt for the man to be buried in. Then he goes and prays janazah over him. Sayyidina Umar is fuming. Wallah, he's fuming. What is going on here? We know who this guy is. We know what he's been up to. What are you doing? And someone I've benefited greatly from, Sayyid Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari from Morocco, rahmatullah alayhi, when he explains this, he says, why do you think God called him the mercy to the worlds? Because what the Prophet ﷺ is doing, he knows. Because if every other Muslim knows, do you think the Prophet doesn't know? Yeah? The shirt was given because the Prophet, his son asked for it. Yeah? Because his son told the Prophet, if you want, I'll bring you his head. He said no. So when he dies, he asks, can you be buried in your shirt? Because people knew what the Prophet ﷺ was. So he, gave the shirt. Then he went and prayed, janazah over him and witnessed the burial. Because the janazah was never in the mosque. It was always in the graveyard, in Jannatul Baqi. So, pardon?
I was going to ask who it was. The leader who died.
Abdullah bin Ubay. He, then Sayyid Abdullah bin Siddiq al-Ghumari, he says that the Prophet ﷺ wanted to go to the very extreme of maybe God will. Just because of me, maybe. And also, he says he wanted to make sure that, the heart of the son was not, any way injured at all. It's just that, when we have situations like this, fiqh is there. Fiqh means understanding. Yeah? And fiqh is there for us to understand each other. If we can't, solace, provide that solace when someone dear passes away, then we don't have a good understanding of the deen. Because at the end of the day, he's a human being. Because what's the difference between us and someone who hasn't got faith? Is literally that line there. It is, isn't it? And people don't realize that. People don't realize that, it's that. Do you think God doesn't know? God is the one that's feeding and keeping them. The only thing is, He's given us a faith, but He hasn't given it to them. But that doesn't mean that we throw it back in His face. And our scholarship, the Imams of Aqidah, they go that the position is that, if someone was genuinely searching, never denied Islam, but was genuinely searching, we don't give no hukm. Because that person was genuinely searching. He never, got to the conclusion. So how are we to give a conclusion? We leave that to God, because God will judge him.
Sheikh, one question. This might sound complicated, but going to uni, I talk to a lot of people, and there's another category of people which is very difficult to define. But there's this group of people who cognitively, their brain hasn't even come up with this idea that I need to do this, as in go searching. I don't know how to explain it. It's just in their wildest dreams. It's not even there. That I need to search. So what would you say about those kind of people that their brain hasn't even conceived?
Make dua for them. That's all we can do. We make dua. Because what you've got to understand is that who has a guarantee that they will die a Muslim? Who's got a guarantee? No one. So the men of God, they say that the liver split at the moment of death.
What does that mean here?
What it means is that they either die on Islam or they don't. So just because the livers split. They either split on faith or they split on kufr. There's statement of is an anecdote about Imam Fakhruddin Razi. Have you heard of him?
Yes.
Fakhruddin Razi. Fakhruddin Razi, from Central Asia, was a genius of a man.
He's a rationalist.
He was a rationalist, but he was a commentator on the Quran. His tafsir, is called Keys to the Unseen, Mafatih al-Ghaib, or it's called Tafsir al-Kabir. He was a great Shafi jurist and Imam of the Deen, and They say that, when he was dying, because he made a statement that he could prove God with 100 statements, arguments. He could, argue for the existence of God with 100 arguments. So, when in his final time, Satan came and he started, so let's hear them. So he's dying, and Satan comes and says, let's hear them. So if he started that, he would have not died.
So isn't there one where he was telling this old woman that he said, I have 100 proofs?
No, he has 100 proofs. But when he was dying, Satan came to him and said, I want to hear those 100. And when he started, his sheikh, from his sheikh was Najmuddin Kubra, a great man of God. From the unseen, he helped him. He told him, this is Satan. Stop this. And he said the Shahada, and he died on the Shahada. It's just that we've got no guarantee.
There's a story I heard, and I have no idea where it's from. One of the scholars said, if there was a knock at the door, and I knew it was death, and I knew that I could walk there, and die Muslim, I wouldn't even get up from my seat, because I might, in those 10 paces, lose faith. If he knew that, see what I mean? I wish I could remember the details.
I've never heard it, but I've not heard it. But the thing is that death is such that we don't have any guarantee. Because that's why we always ask that we die on Islam. Inshallah, shall we pray Isha? Yes.
Is there any literature about Najmuddin Kubra?
Yes.
I can't find much about him. I've heard stories here and there. But
no, there's works of his.
Recommend anything?
Top of mind I don't, but I'll send them to you. Because
I've heard about him. He's a great wali.
No, he's a great. One of the greats. Some of them have been translated into English as well.
What are you talking about?
Najmuddin Kubra. Inshallah. Has everybody got wudu? We'll pray Isha.